Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Chris, your sneaker professor, and I started this series with part one, which was a study on eBay and a year-over-year data set based on their Black Friday sales. And I noticed that it followed the trend, and I wanted to make sure I put that out there so I would have a record of it for people that work with me on consults and things like that who are asking questions about the resale platforms. I could give them real data, real time, based on specific data sets. So the Black Friday set for eBay is part one. This data set is a micro set of data from StockX. So hence you see the green screen over there and it says Black Friday sneaker data 2022 part two. But this one is based on Nike's 44% inventory woes. Now, if you don't remember what that means and what I'm talking about, during Nike's last quarterly report, I've said it, a few times. They said that they had 44% inventory increase over the previous quarters, and that was due to supply chain issues. And the industry was like, "Oh wow, if Nike's going to have to start discounting heavily, it could affect their margins," which it will affect their margins. But what a lot of people said was that consumers wouldn't buy at full price since they'll be able to get Nike at a discount, and now they can just wait to buy it. I don't think that's the case, but I wrote the article and I did the research, so you guys will get a couple of charts here. If you're ready to get into this, let's get into it. If you're looking away and you're just listening to this, hopefully I'll be able to explain it well enough that you can understand what I'm talking about when I'm being descriptive here. But the charts are on the site. You go over here to the description. You can click through and read the article. And I'm going to, I'll link both articles, part one and part two, so you'll be good to go. So I'm saying, and I'm making a prediction, that Nike's 44% inventory woes should contract considerably by spring 2023. So I'm saying by May, Nike's inventory issues will be back to around 12 to 16%. Now, I didn't put that in the article. That's just me telling you guys. That's what I think. We can come back to this in 6 months and be like, yeah, Chris was right. And I'll be like, I told you, I'm typically right, but sometimes I'm wrong too. But let's get into it. Nike's recent quarterly report, they showed inventories for Nike at 9.7 billion, up 44% compared to the prior year period, driven by elevated in-transit inventories from ongoing supply chain volatility, partially offset by strong consumer demand during the quarter. So the supply chain problem, the product is in transit, it's on the way, but the consumers are still buying Nike. We know they are because we see the sales going through on all of these different Jordan 1s and different Jordan product that's dropping, the penny social status, all of these different shoes that Nike's releasing. We know that these items are selling, but there are a considerable amount of Nike products that are sitting, in particular apparel, which I don't get into on here. I'm only looking at sneakers. The fact that 44% inventory is such a huge number led to consternation by analysts who posited Nike would encounter headwinds by being promotional to remove the glut of products in the supply chain. The hypothesis from these analysts was consumers could grow used to, and I got my phone keeps going off, could grow used to the discounted prices and deals, causing the consumer to hesitate on purchasing product at full SRP. Now that's a logical conclusion to make, but instead of waiting 3 months, which most data for sneaker sales, it comes after 3 months of collecting and the information comes in quarterly from point of sales data. That's a slow process. So how do we gauge what's happening in real time? A fantastic gauge, right, is resale. So I use a combination of what you've seen so far. I use a combination of resale research from eBay's tools, and I use an individual seller set of data via StockX as an indicator of brand heat and momentum, and to measure if the data that I'm looking at parallels the larger retail market. What I'm doing isn't a foolproof system, but I found over all of this time, if you go to the website here, you'll see reports. You can click on them and just go through and read a bunch of reports. What I found that over time, the micro set of data that I'm using is comparable to the data used by really big multi-million-dollar firms. But since my data derives primarily from StockX in this data set, not in the first one it derived from eBay, it's easy to think that my information could be skewed. To offset those concerns, what I want to offer is all of those reports that I've done to show you so you can kind of juxtapose the two and, look and see if it works. This is the beautiful thing about my information. It's more immediate and it's informative because I'm talking to you about it right now. And when I do a consult with somebody, I can give it to them in real time and show it to them. And when you get that close to the market, even though the data set is smaller, it's more immediate. And in many instances, it's more valuable to the company that needs to know what's happening. So the great thing about StockX is I can pull data directly from the platform, but they also have an export feature, but the button very rarely works. So if you can reach out to StockX and say, hey, why don't you guys fix the export data button? It'd be great because then I could get different sets of data from different sellers who will give me the information. But when their export data feature is working, it's just super easy. And it sends a full report of the last 2 years of that seller on StockX. Just makes it a lot easier. So why do I think Nike's inventory woes will be short-lived? And I'm stuttering. But why do I think it will be short-lived, that they won't have problems for as long as everyone thinks? In the report on eBay, right, which was this report, the part 1, let's hope nothing pops up there. Yeah. In that report, I established that eBay is losing ground. But I asked a question in that report, and I asked if it was because of Nike's inventory issues or was it because of another resale platform. I'm confirming in this report. StockX is no longer a thorn in eBay's side. A thorn is something small that you can pluck out. StockX is a long-term eclipse, basically turning resale into a dark valley where other resale platforms are left attempting to navigate night with a keychain flashlight. Since my working hypothesis right now states that Nike will move through that 45% inventory by next spring, I have to provide evidence, right? And my hope is that you will look at the evidence and consider a ratio or an extrapolation, and that will suffice. I'm focusing on a longer window than I did in part 1. Part 1, I used 48 hours. This small set of StockX data, it's quick, and then it consistently parallels the larger market, and I trust these numbers to make predictions. In other words, where somebody be like, well, how do you trust? I trust those numbers because all of the reports I've done, when I look at the bigger marketplaces analysis, it parallels it maybe a 65% ratio, a 65% kind of comparison. If they have a top 10, 6 out of 10 of the shoes that I'll use in this data matches their top 10. And they're using data pulled from all point of sale systems wherever they can collect data from credit card users. All right? Or from companies that will provide their point of sales data. But I trust these numbers. So what do we do for our guidelines? In the previous one on eBay, I used the guidelines with 48 hours. I used the keyword sneakers, and then I pulled all of that information and gave you numbers. Here, for StockX, I'm pulling sales data for 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and this 2022 year to show performance on the platform. And the days that are covered are going to be Black Friday through Cyber Monday. So it's a much longer data set, but that's because it's a smaller sample size. So yeah, are there potential problems here? Yeah, there always is. With data, nothing is exactly concise, and the way you read it can be read in different ways. But I trust what I'm reading here because it's hardly ever incorrect, even though there's no right or wrong or right or correct or incorrect in that sense. Let's just get to the chart. I know you guys are like, man, just show us the chart. And here is the chart. As a matter of fact, I think I have it open here so you can see it in detail. And what you're looking at are sales, individual sales over the course from 2018 to 2019, and it gives an explanation on each one. I almost dropped my pen. It gives an explanation for each year. Now, 2018, what you have to remember is StockX was launched in 2016, 2017. It was still building. Website traffic to StockX at that time was between 3 million visits per month. And then going into 2018, the website visits moved up to about 6 million visits per month. So the 44 sales in 2018, StockX was relatively new. The average price per sale was higher, but it was 45 Black Friday to post Cyber Monday. The following year, the increase was due to the amount of marketing and growth StockX experienced year over year. 2020, it went to 82. But this was because of excess inventory that contributed to this increase and heavy promo at retail. You could go into a retail store and snatch up 10, 15 pair of shoes and keep it rocking. And people had stimulus payments, etc. It was amazing. Now, something interesting happened, and I'm going to get back to that when I bounce back to the article. But 2021, it dropped all the way to 32. StockX's website hit a high of monthly traffic at 44 million. More resellers entered the marketplace, forcing policy changes at retail locations and a difficulty in acquiring product. I'm also missing November 30th on that data set, but still 32. Considerable drop off from the previous year of the quarantine and the pandemic. 2022, this past Black Friday to Cyber Monday, 151 sales. More than almost 3 of these years combined. That's an insane number. Those numbers are off the chart. They require a lot more explanation. But StockX is where those sales that eBay lost are going. So let's go back to the article. I wanted to make sure you saw that bigger picture so you would know what's happening. So why was this huge jump from 21 to 22? Why was there a huge jump? In part 1, I stated resale was trending down, and as evidence, I used the keywords sneakers to research sales for Black Friday on eBay. It's clear in this data set, this one here, that sales are not trending down. But any infographic that you see can't be taken simply at face value. A discussion has to take place on the why. Research on Google Trends shows a steady increase search for the keyword StockX. Now, I'm showing you this chart because using the term StockX, you can see the consistent growth of people searching for StockX. This means that the website is becoming more visited. It's an extremely important data set to do a search and to know that StockX is still gaining. Now, if you put in a comparison here, if you put in a comparison to eBay on a search like this, it's going to crush StockX. And now, that's where StockX has a lot of ground to gain. But remember, eBay is older, so it ranks higher in search for every category that they carry. StockX is specifically about sneakers. They don't yet have the electronics and the purses and the handbags. They don't have that market on lock yet. So this growth is really sneaker interest. All right, so let's go back here and keep going. So with this research on these Google Trends, and it shows that increase for the keyword StockX, more people began to dabble in sneaker resale. So we're looking at 2021 to 2022. So we're really going 2020 to 2022. You have a decrease from 82 down to 32, then up to 151. All of these people that got into the marketplace 2020 to 2021, it oversaturated the market. A few things began to take place at a much faster rate than they had in the past. Sneaker resale has always been cyclical. Sales shift from platform to platform, but there used to be risk involved in sneaker resale. Buying and selling on eBay and Amazon and Kixify and all of these different platforms, or even taking your stuff and sending it into Flight Club, you had to be very aware of trends, and you had to have an understanding of how to acquire and sell through inventory. You had to know how to take pictures. You had to know how to do descriptions. I've written about all of this before, but if we go back to 2010, sellers moved from eBay to Amazon. In 2013, Amazon began to remove requirements for being approved as a seller on the platform, and a flood of knockoffs and counterfeits filled the marketplace on Amazon. Sellers went back to eBay, and many began building their own websites because of the ease of Square, Shopify, WordPress as a CMS. Those things empowered sellers, and a lot of people opened their own websites, and you saw these businesses like Stadium Goods blow up, right? So every 2 to 3 years in resale shifted locations, and then every 5 years there's like this hard reset that happens, right? When Campless became StockX at the end of 2016, heading into 2017, and the GOAT app arrived, resale became democratized. As the platforms grew, StockX, GOAT, Grailed, as these platforms grew, the average sale price on sneakers began declining. As Nike began to move to a direct-to-consumer strategy, this began to shape the acquisition of sneakers. Another aspect that changed around resale was the policies of retailers who became frustrated and tired of the countless resellers attempting to buy all of one certain SKU. Retailers implemented policies in 2021, limiting the amount of sneakers that could be purchased. Now, that's why you see this decrease to 32 in 2021. A lot of new sellers, average price started dropping. Retailers put in policies preventing you from buying a lot of one shoe. StockX started to rise, taking traffic away from eBay, taking sellers away from eBay. But like I said, it democratized it. Now, what does all of this have to do with this considerable jump in 2022? So this year, this huge jump, what does all of this have to do with it? Everything. Nike's inventory issue has meant that the brand has been flooding their own doors, outlets, factory stores, Unite stores, right? All of these different stores. The savvy reseller and buyer has been able to capitalize on these opportunities, but instead of taking their deals to eBay, those sellers decided quantity over quality was the key. StockX enabled a risk-free transaction for sellers, and those with older accounts featuring early payout and lower fees could ride the considerable amount of marketing StockX has done to capture traffic from eBay. The question becomes, is the spike of 151 similar to 2020 and the 82? Well, in 2020, there was an abundance of sneakers available with discounts, and there was pent-up consumer demand. So that spike with 82 is not exactly the same. In 2020, the growth was based on less competition. There weren't as many sellers. This year, the growth is based solely on nearness to Nike retail outlets. Did you catch that? Retailers aren't getting huge allotments from Nike. Foot Locker announced a plan to carry a more diverse product mix. Sneaker bots, guys running proxies and botting, pulls most of the premium product from the marketplace, which meant all of these new resellers who weren't located near a Nike retail location had to resort to purchasing online. And StockX, when compared to retailers like Foot Locker, Finish Line, and Hibbett Sports, gets an average of 36 million visits per month compared to 14 million, 13 million, and 8 million visits for Foot Locker, Finish Line, and Hibbett Sports, respectively. Now, with this small data set and the fact that the new resellers who are not using bots no longer really have access to that product because everything goes into a raffle, the competition for stronger sellers, which is why it went up this year, the competition for stronger sellers is kind of diminishing. So you have this spike, but it's not the same as the 2022 spike or the 2020 spike, right? This is a lot of information, man. I know it's a lot of information and it's slightly confusing, and I'm saying a lot, but I think this data set provides a window into why the concern around Nike's inventory woes is completely overstated. When Nike is available in abundance, which is becoming more and more likely, buyers will utilize buy now, pay later options and credit to purchase a piece of the coolest sneaker company on the planet. This doesn't mean they won't purchase at SRP. So I'm conflating two different things here. I'm looking at the fact that I said Nike's woes will decline. They won't have as many problems with inventory. And I'm explaining that people, the regular consumer, is buying all of this stuff, buying it using buy now, pay later, Klarna or whatever source that they're using to pay later. But that's not stopping people from buying at full SRP either. When Nike drops a hype sneaker, lost and found, they still sell out. The real story here is that resale is not taking place from wholesale account retail doors as much. But Nike understands their customer, and they're using digital to place their stores in the correct locations. And that will help the brand to get inventories back down much sooner than expected. Those consumers who don't use Nike.com or visit the Nike doors will find a way to get to the Nike swoosh and the Jumpman, and they're using StockX. What's the summary here? What am I saying? Because that was a lot. That's a lot, and it's confusing, and I'm really going to have to go back and rewrite that paragraph. What am I saying here? The jump in 2022, right? I'm going back over here and looking at this paperwork. The jump in 2022 is not the same as the jump here in the jump in 2020 is not the same as the jump in 2022. There's two different things that are happening here. If a buyer, and this is not telling you all to run out and go find a Nike store. If a buyer is near a Nike store, they're going to have more access to great product than you would if you're going to a Foot Locker, Finish Line, or a Champs, or a JD Sports, or whatever. You're going to have more access to great product at Nike than you will at any other store, any of their wholesale accounts. If you don't have a Nike store, it's becoming progressively harder for you to flip shoes. Ultimately, what we're running into is a market where the bots are grabbing anything that's expensive and good to sell, and that's leaving other sellers in a position where winning a raffle really doesn't matter if you're trying to flip shoes, because the shoes that you're winning don't have enough profit for it to matter. I talked about this with Yeezy and the fact that the Yeezy sneakers that have been dropping for the last year, not the slides or the runners, foam runners, but the Yeezy 350s, the Yeezy Boost, those products were not reselling at $220 and $240 after tax. There was no room in it for profit. So those shoes were being bought and people were hoping and holding, and they're not going to gain ground, I don't think. We're in a complex position. Nike's inventory woes, overstated. They're going to go away. They're going to go away. eBay is going to continue to diminish. StockX is going to continue to rise because the ease of use has completely democratized the entire process of resale. It's a lot here, man. I almost confused myself, but hopefully you get what I'm saying. And I know this was very detailed. If you have questions, man, please leave questions, because one way or another, I'm going to have to get enough subscribers, man, where I do these things live and you can see in real time what I'm looking at and what I'm researching. Because doing it on my own independently, writing these articles, I have to go back and edit the articles and all this stuff. It gets really difficult. But that's it. I just appreciate you for staying as long as you did. I'll see you on the next one. Really good information out there. If you haven't been on the site, go to the site and click through. Great articles here on Adidas Cultivate and Bloom, Marshawn Lynch and Allbirds. Really cool discussions, man. Great articles. And oh my gosh, I love this Bodega Heritage Patchwork. Love this shoe. Anyway, that's it. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.